1962, a Lancaster County contractor cut into an Amish farmhouse wall, expecting rot. Instead, he found packed straw and horsehair plaster, bone dry after 90 years. He never got an explanation. Today we're counting down 25 Amish insulation secrets modern builders abandoned. 1. The wall that fixes its own moisture. 2. The material banned for saving too much energy. 3. The modern insulation is now blamed for rotting houses from the inside out. Number 25. A Pennsylvania farmer packs wet clay-coated straw into a timber frame, working beside two neighbors who arrive before sunrise with their own wagons of straw. They chop the straw by hand, dip it in a thin clay slip, and press it into the wall cavity in fist-sized clumps until it holds its own shape without a single fastener. This technique traces back to 12th century European wattle and daub. It vanished from American building for so long that a natural builder named Robert Laporte had to reintroduce it in 1990. Marketing it to modern contractors as a replacement for petroleum foam panels they'd never questioned. Neighbors traded surplus straw at harvest, so no wall in the settlement ever went unfilled, and no family ever had to buy what the land already gave them for free. That generosity is exactly what a modern supply chain, built on invoices and delivery windows, can't replicate. This is now marketed as premium natural building. Number 24. An Amish plasterer folds handfuls of horsehair into wet lime plaster, smoothing it across hand-split lath with a wooden float, working room by room over the course of a week. The hair keeps the plaster from cracking as it cures and traps a layer of still air directly inside the wall. Doing quiet insulating work nobody labeled at the time. Restoration contractors today have measured a plain, uninsulated plaster wall at roughly double the R value of an uninsulated drywall wall of the same thickness, a gap most homeowners never know exists. Builders scraped horsehair plaster out anyway once drywall arrived in the mid-20th century, calling it primitive and outdated. Under some of that primitive plaster, inspectors still find crumpled newspaper stuffed in as a second layer, a detail nobody planned for and nobody ever bothered removing. Most modern drywall crews gutting these rooms never run that R-value comparison at all. They tear the old wall out on schedule, dump it in a bin, and hang a thinner replacement without ever measuring what they threw away. That trapped air pocket is simply called insulation today. Number 23. A boy shucks corn on a porch while his grandfather sweeps the discarded cobs into a burlap sack instead of the fire pit. Nothing on an Amish farm is thrown away if it can still do work. Husks get shredded, cobs get crushed, and both get packed into attic cavities and wall gaps as loose fill before the first frost arrives. 19th century Chicago cottages have been found during modern renovations, with wall cavities stuffed full of cork, wood shavings, corn cobs, and even dried seaweed hauled inland from the coast, whatever a household had on hand that trapped air between the studs. It cost nothing because it was already free, grown or gathered the same season it was used. Modern loose-fill insulation still runs on this same logic. Number 22. A family peels back decades of wallpaper during a renovation and finds their grandparents' newspaper stuffed into a gap by a window frame. The headline still legible after 80 years. Before 1965, insulation in an American home was not required by any building code at all, in any state, for any climate. Families with limited means packed cavities with newspaper, cardboard, straw, or rags, whatever was dry and available that winter, then repeated the process the following year when it settled. It was flammable, it was ugly behind the plaster, and it worked noticeably better than the only real alternative, which was nothing. Even after codes finally changed, enforcement lagged for years in rural counties. So plenty of houses standing today were built and sold with nothing more than that same folded newsprint packed behind the plaster. And nobody ever went back to fix it. Building codes only closed that loophole decades later. Number 21. A carpenter in 1955 sweeps mill sawdust into a wheelbarrow bound for a neighbor's wall cavity instead of the burn pile out back. A trade that cost him nothing but the trip. 8 inches of packed sawdust tests out at roughly R8, a genuinely respectable number for a byproduct nobody had to pay for or manufacture. Yet by the 1960s, the practice disappeared almost entirely from American buildings, even as fiberglass and foam took its place at a much higher price per inch. Building scientists today point to a blunt reason for the disappearance. Nobody could bag sawdust and sell it at a markup, so the industry that replaced it simply stopped talking about it. Nobody bags free sawdust, so nobody sells it. Number 20. A team notches solid pine logs into a cabin wall, chinking the gaps between them with clay and moss as they climb toward the roofline. Softwood logs test around 1.5 units of insulating value per inch, which means an honest 18-inch wall performs close to today's code minimums using nothing manufactured at all, just timber cut from the property. Nobody had to run that calculation to trust the design. They simply noticed, year after year, that the cabin held its heat straight through a hard January without a single space heater. Some of those original cabins are still standing on Pennsylvania and Ohio farmland today, repurposed as sheds or root houses, outliving 3 or 4 generations of the vinyl-sided houses built next to them. Modern code minimums still haven't caught up to it. Number 19. A mason lays the second course of a 2-foot adobe wall, tamping each sun-dried block into place by hand under the New Mexico heat. Thick adobe and stone walls in Santa Fe have been measured to perform near an R20 equivalent in real buildings, not because the material itself insulates especially well, but because 2 feet of solid mass simply refuses to change temperature quickly in either direction. The wall isn't stopping the cold from arriving. It's outlasting the cold long enough for the sun to come back around and reverse it. Thermal mass like this now sells at a premium. Number 18. A German Pennsylvania family herds cattle through the lower level of a barn built directly into the side of a hill, their breath fogging in the cold morning air. The bank barn design, refined in the Swiss Alps as early as the 1500s, uses the earth itself as a foundation wall, giving livestock a thermal buffer that no amount of lumber alone can match. Whole extended families built and maintained these barns together, generation after generation, patching the stonework each spring because a barn built once, correctly, into a hillside tends to outlive the very family that raised it. Some of these Pennsylvania German barns date back to the 1790s and are still fully in use, having survived 200 years of harsh winters on nothing more than stone, earth, and a design nobody has ever needed to update. Modern barns rarely last anywhere near that long. Number 17. Snow sits heavy on a barn roof while the south-facing overhang below stays clear and mostly dry through the coldest stretch of winter. That projecting forebay isn't decorative. Whatever a modern visitor might assume looking at it, builders oriented it south on purpose, letting the low winter sun warm the stable wall directly, while the higher summer sun barely grazed it at all. Historians studying these barns now call the arrangement an early form of passive solar design, developed by farmers centuries before anyone coined that phrase or wrote it into a textbook. Architects now call this passive solar design. Number 16. A farm wife applies a fresh coat of lime whitewash to a farmhouse exterior every single spring, working the brush into every hairline crack in the old stone. Lime whitewash reflects summer heat off the surface, resists mold growth in humid months, and lets the wall breathe moisture out from the inside, rather than trapping it against the stone. It cost almost nothing to make from local lime and needed redoing every year without fail, which sounds like a burden until you realize a wall inspected and maintained yearly. almost never fails catastrophically all at once, the way a sealed modern wall eventually can. Modern reflective coatings try to replicate the same cooling effect with acrylic resins and titanium dioxide. But few of them let a wall breathe the way plain lime does, and none of them get reapplied often enough to catch small problems early. Few modern coatings get reapplied that often. Number 15. A crew fills the stud cavities of a 19th century frame house with a single course of fired brick before the lath and plaster goes up over it. Brick nogging, as it was called at the time, added real thermal mass to an otherwise thin wood frame wall decades before insulation existed as a purchasable product category at all. It made the house noticeably heavier and slower to frame, but it also made the rooms inside measurably steadier through a summer heat wave. A trade builder's considered obviously worth making. That extra weight is what modern framing avoids. Number 14. A German craftsman weaves split branches into a wall frame, then presses wet clay by hand into every gap between them. The same motion builders repeated across Europe since at least the 12th century. Wattle and daub are the direct architectural ancestor of the straw clay walls. Amish builders still favor today, separated by 8 centuries and an ocean, but built with nearly identical hand motions. It required no factory order, no truck delivery, and no product warranty, because every material used was already standing in the woodlot directly behind the house. Timber-framed wattle and daub buildings from the medieval period still stand in parts of England and Germany today, patched and repatched for 800 years, proving the technique's real failure point was never the material itself. 8 centuries is a warranty no manufacturer offers. Number 13. A modern natural building class packs fresh straw clay into a timber frame, guided by a teacher who first revived the method for American builders back in 1990, decades after it had nearly vanished. What started as one man's attempt to replace petroleum foam panels has quietly spread through natural building communities that now operate a lot like an Amish work crew. Skill passed hand to hand between neighbors, never sold as a certification or a franchise. Nobody patented the technique, so nobody profits from teaching it on a scale, which is exactly why most licensed contractors have still never heard of it. No franchise ever figured out how to sell that. If you think that's the last surprise on this list, subscribe now, because the reveal coming up in a few minutes exposes the modern insulation system that quietly rotted thousands of American homes from the inside out. Number 12. Inspectors in a Canadian fire lab hold an open flame against a plastered straw bale wall for 2 full hours at temperatures near 1,850 degrees, watching for any sign of ignition. It never catches. Packed tight, a bale has almost no oxygen left inside it to feed a fire, the same reason a thick phone book smolders at the edges instead of bursting into flame. Conventional stick-framed walls, tested under those same commercial fire standards, have failed and burned through in as little as 30 minutes to an hour. The straw meant to look flimsy on camera outperforms the lumber that was built to replace it. Few modern fire codes were ever tested against straw. Number 11. A straw bale advocate in the 1990s tells a journalist the walls test out above R60, a figure that spreads fast through magazines and early building forums. A university lab running proper hotbox testing years later under controlled conditions lands closer to R1.3 per inch, or roughly R30 for a full 23-inch bale wall. Both numbers still get repeated online today as settled fact, often in the same comment thread. The real scandal isn't that straw bale insulates poorly, because it clearly doesn't. It's that nobody in the industry agreed on how to measure it honestly for well over a decade, and by then, the reputation damage was already done. Early estimates leaned on a single bale tested in isolation, while the more rigorous later tests measured a full plastered wall assembly under realistic conditions, and those two numbers were never going to match. Nobody bothered updating the record once better tests existed. Number 10. A young couple finally finds an insurer willing to write a policy on their finished straw bale home years after 2 other companies turned them down without even sending an inspector. Some straw bale houses have been insured at rates below comparable stick-built homes once an insurer bothers to review fire test documentation and permits already on file. Most insurers never read that documentation at all. They reject the material on reputation alone, leaning on the exact same century-old prejudice that has followed straw building since farmers first started stacking bales into walls out of necessity. Reputation, it turns out, outlives the actual paperwork. Number 9. A farm family lowers a bushel of apples down into a root cellar dug beneath the barn's earthen bankside, where the surrounding soil holds a steady temperature no matter what the season is doing above ground. Neighboring families rotated shared storage space here during hard winters. An unspoken agreement passed down without a single written contract, so that nobody in the settlement went hungry while someone else's cellar sat half empty a mile down the road. The earth did the actual insulating work, silently, for free, every year. The community simply did the rest, sharing what the ground preserved. Most of these cellars vanished within a generation of electric refrigeration reaching rural Pennsylvania, replaced by a machine that needs a constant supply of electricity just to do what a hillside once did on its own. A refrigerator now does what a hillside did, free. Number 8. An Amish builder flatly rejects a customer's request for a faster, cheaper wall assembly, insisting instead on the slower method his own grandfather used 2 generations earlier. Plain construction philosophy values durability over speed and fashion, built on the simple theory that a building meant to stand for 200 years cannot honestly be built the same way as one meant to last 30. It is, in practice, a slower and more expensive promise, made quietly to people who haven't even been born yet, to thank the builder for it. Few builders today promise anything past 30 years. Number 7. 60 men from 3 surrounding counties arrive before dawn to raise a barn frame that will ultimately house one single family's cattle herd. There is no signed contract, no itemized invoice, and no building inspector standing off to the side with a clipboard. Barn raising functioned as a form of insulation in a completely different sense, insulating the family from the very real risk of attempting dangerous, heavy timber work entirely alone. The knowledge of how to notch a joint or properly pack a wall cavity traveled through gatherings exactly like this one, passed hand to hand, never printed in a manual. A modern construction crew doing the same job would need permits, liability insurance, and a paid supervisor, none of which existed in that field, and none of which slowed the frame going up before dark. No permit ever slowed a barn raising like that. Number 6. A 1912 factory presses waste wood fiber into a half-inch insulating board destined for a farmhouse attic somewhere a few states away. Competing versions followed almost immediately. Cane board pressed from leftover sugarcane fiber, inso board made from wheat straw nobody wanted, and even one obscure product manufactured from discarded licorice root. Nearly every one of these early boards was built from agricultural leftovers that would otherwise have simply been burned or dumped. Most of them disappeared entirely once cheaper synthetic foam boards took over the market by the 1950s, taking the recycling logic behind them along for the ride. That recycling logic disappeared right along with the boards. Number 5. A 1930s insulation catalog praises a fire-resistant, energy-saving miracle material said to be available to every builder in America at a reasonable price. That material was asbestos. It insulated so effectively and resisted open flames so completely that it went into nearly every American building for close to a century, right up until 1980, when regulators finally banned it outright as a proven carcinogen. Roughly half of American homes built before that ban still contain some form of it today, quietly, sealed up behind drywall and pipe insulation nobody has touched in decades. Removing it now legally requires a licensed abatement crew, sealed containment, and a bill that can run into the thousands, all for a material once handed out as a free safety upgrade. That free safety upgrade now costs thousands to remove. Number 4. A contractor in 1965 blows loose silvery insulation into a customer's attic, confident he's installing the single most modern product available on the market that year. That product, vermiculite, was pulled from shelves decades later, once regulators finally traced widespread asbestos contamination back to one Montana mine that had supplied most of the country's entire vermiculite supply for generations. For nearly 20 years, homeowners across the country paid good money to have a hidden health hazard installed in their homes on purpose, believing they were upgrading. Nobody warned those homeowners for almost 20 years. Number 3. An Amish father politely refuses a traveling salesman's pitch for a brand new synthetic insulation product, telling him plainly that his community intends to wait and watch for a decade before anyone builds with it. That deliberate patience, passed from apprentice to apprentice instead of from advertisement to customer, has quietly spared entire Amish communities from at least 3 separate national insulation scandals over the past century alone. Nobody in those communities ever had to recall a material they were careful enough to never install in the first place. That same wait-and-watch habit meant many Amish households never touched urea formaldehyde foam, never bought vermiculite insulation, and skipped EIFS cladding entirely, simply because none of it had been proven yet by anyone they trusted. That same patience spared entire communities more than once. Number 2. A contractor in 1978 sprays polyurethane foam insulation into thousands of American homes, genuinely confident he's delivering the construction industry's next great leap forward in energy savings. By 1982, regulators classified that exact same foam as a known human carcinogen due to ongoing formaldehyde off-gassing inside occupied homes. Homeowners also discovered, around the same time, that the foam had physically shrunk inside their walls, quietly losing much of the insulating value they'd already paid a premium to install. The miracle material lasted barely 4 years in the marketplace before it became a liability almost nobody could safely and affordably remove. Some provinces and states went further and banned its residential use outright, leaving homeowners to sell a house with a disclosure form nobody wanted to read closely. That miracle material barely lasted 4 years on shelves. Number 1. In 1995, inspectors in Wilmington, North Carolina, tested 32 homes clad in an airtight synthetic stucco system that had been sold nationwide as the future of energy-efficient residential building. 30 of those 32 homes had moisture already trapped deep inside their walls, quietly rotting studs and sheathing that nobody could see or even suspect from the pristine exterior. The system worked exactly as it was engineered to work. It kept water out so completely that the small amount which inevitably got in through a window seam or a nail hole could never find a way to escape again. Modern spray foam insulation carries that same silent risk today, according to building scientists who now routinely see wood rot surfacing roughly 8 years after installation, hidden behind a material that, once sprayed, effectively cannot be undone or inspected without tearing it out entirely. The old farmhouse wall, the one built from nothing more than straw, horsehair, and clay, by people with no laboratory and no warranty, never had that problem. It was never sealed tight enough to trap anything at all inside it. It simply breathed, quietly for 200 years. And unlike the houses built to replace it, it's still standing. The straw wall never made that same mistake. Which of these 25 deserves a comeback in your own home? Tell me which one below.